Heathcliff's relationship to Cathy in Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. I sometimes wonder if anything about Wuthering Heights is as it appears. Nelly Dean as the main narrator places herself in the best light, but as James Hafley points out, she does nothing to prevent Hindley from bullying Heathcliff as a child. It's her failure to tell Cathy that Heathcliff is listening, which she says it would degrade her to marry him, that leads Heathcliff to run away. And on her deathbed, Cathy says, "Nelly has played traitor. Nelly is my hidden enemy." Even Nelly herself says at one point, "I thought Heathcliff himself less guilty than I." And her manipulation of the protagonists leaves her effectively in control of both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange. Is she a malicious plotter all the way through? As Gideon Shunami notes, neither Nelly nor Lockwood is a reliable narrator, which puts the reader in the position of constantly having to work out not what is said, but what is meant by what is said. And there's nowhere in the novel where this applies more aptly than in the passage where Nelly, at the beginning of her narrative, describes Mr. Earnshaw's trip to Liverpool. Here's the gist of it. One fine summer morning, it was the beginning of harvest, Mr. Earnshaw came downstairs, dressed for a journey, and after he had told Joseph what was to be done during the day, he said, speaking to his son, "Now, my bonny man, I'm going to Liverpool today. What shall I bring you?" "I shall walk there and back, 60 miles each way. That is a long spell." Hindley named a fiddle, and then he asked Miss Cathy, who was hardly 6 years old, and she chose a riding whip. "He promised to bring me," Nelly says, "a pocket full of apples and pears," and then he set off. It seemed a long while to us all, the 3 days of his absence. Mrs. Earnshaw expected him by supper time on the third evening, and she put the meal off hour after hour. Then it grew dark, and just about 11 o'clock the door latch was raised quietly, and in stepped the master. He threw himself into a chair, laughing and groaning, and bid them all stand off, for he was nearly killed. He would not have such another walk for the 3 kingdoms. And at the end of it, to be flighted to death, he said, opening his greatcoat, which he held bundled up in his arms. "See here, wife, I was never so beaten with anything in my life. But you must e'en take it as a gift of God, though it's as dark almost as if it came from the devil." We crowded round, and over Miss Cathy's head I had a peep at a dirty, ragged, black-haired child, big enough both to walk and talk. Yet, when it was set on its feet, it only stared round and repeated over and over again some gibberish that nobody could understand. I was frightened, and Mrs. Earnshaw was ready to fling it out of doors. She did fly up, asking how he could fashion to bring that gypsy brat into the house when they had their own bairns to feed and fend for. What he meant to do with it, and whether he were mad. The master tried to explain, but all that I could make out was a tale of his seeing it starving and houseless and as good as dumb in the streets of Liverpool, where he picked it up and inquired for its owner. Not a soul knew to whom it belonged, he said, and he thought it better to take it home with him at once than run into vain expenses there, because he was determined he would not leave it as he found it. We also learned that as a result of Mr. Earnshaw's efforts to care for the child he has found, the fiddle is broken and the whip is lost, the first sign that he prioritises the waif Heathcliff over his legitimate children.